Ethan Miller had forgotten what silence without screens sounded like. His apartment in Seattle buzzed with noise, the hum of his computer, the whir of traffic outside, and the dull rhythm of city life. But beneath all of that was a deeper kind of noise, the emptiness that came from living next to someone who no longer looked up when you spoke. His husband Daniel was always working. Late nights, early mornings, endless meetings. They had been married 4 years, and lately Ethan felt more like a roommate than a partner. The spark that once filled their small apartment had faded into the glow of separate screens. He used to paint, laugh, plan trips. Now his days blurred together. The quiet moments between them were no longer peaceful. They were heavy. So when a coworker mentioned a nature retreat in Oregon, Ethan signed up immediately. A weekend in the woods sounded like the kind of escape he didn't know he needed. The first thing he noticed when he arrived at the park entrance was how clear the air felt. Crisp, pine-scented, and honest. The second thing he noticed was the ranger, Logan Reed. He introduced himself with a firm handshake and a smile that made strangers feel like old friends. His voice was steady, grounded, like someone who had nothing to prove. "City guy?" Logan asked, noticing Ethan's nervous glance at the map. "Is it that obvious?" Ethan replied with a small laugh. "Only a little. You'll get used to it. The woods have a way of slowing you down." The group that morning was small, 6 hikers with gear and curiosity. Logan led the way along a narrow trail surrounded by towering pines and ferns. The deeper they went, the quieter it got, until the only sounds were the crunch of boots on dirt and the call of distant birds. Ethan fell toward the back of the group, his camera in hand. He wasn't there to prove anything. He just wanted to feel something again. Logan often paused to point out small things. A moss-covered stump, deer tracks near the creek, the way sunlight filtered through the canopy. Ethan listened more to his voice than his words. There was something comforting about it. By noon, 2 hikers turned back, and by mid-afternoon, only Ethan and Logan remained. The trail opened up to a breathtaking view, a small lake glistening like glass beneath the sky. Logan took off his backpack and sat by the water's edge, motioning for Ethan to join him. "You look like you needed this," Logan said, pouring coffee from a thermos. Ethan smiled faintly. "You have no idea." They talked for a while, about small things at first, like where they grew up, what brought them here. Ethan found himself opening up more than he expected. He told Logan about his job, about Daniel, about the silence that filled their home. Logan listened quietly, never interrupting, never judging. When Ethan finished, Logan said, "Sometimes the quiet isn't peace. It's just noise with no sound." The words lingered. Ethan stared out over the lake, watching the ripples stretch outward. There was truth in what Logan said, and something about hearing it from a stranger made it even heavier. As the sun began to dip behind the trees, Logan stood. "It's too late to head back now. We'll camp here tonight. It's safe." Ethan hesitated, but nodded. The idea of spending a night in the woods both scared and comforted him. Together, they built a small fire. Logan moved with the confidence of someone who belonged here, every action calm and deliberate. Ethan watched the flames rise and felt something shift inside him. Maybe it was the warmth, maybe it was the company. But he realized how long it had been since he'd felt present, since he'd looked someone in the eyes and not felt invisible. "You ever notice how different silence feels out here?" Ethan asked softly. Logan poked the fire, his face glowing orange in the light. "Out here, silence isn't empty. It's full. The world still talks. You just have to listen differently." Ethan smiled, staring into the flames. For the first time in years, he didn't feel lonely in the quiet. The tension between them was gentle, unspoken, like a current beneath still water. As night settled, the air grew cooler. The stars appeared, dozens of them, clear and close. Ethan leaned back against a log, wrapping his blanket tighter. Logan sat nearby, sipping coffee, his gaze distant but soft. "Funny," Ethan murmured, half to himself. "I came out here to escape everything, but maybe I just needed to remember what real feels like." Logan looked at him then, his voice low but certain. "Sometimes that's all it takes, getting lost in the right place." The fire cracked, sending a spark upward into the night. Neither of them said another word. The forest around them hummed softly, alive with unseen things. And in that stillness, Ethan felt something he hadn't felt in years, a quiet that didn't hurt. Morning sunlight filtered through the trees, laying soft gold on the forest floor. Ethan woke to the sound of birds echoing through the woods, a rhythm both strange and soothing. For a moment he forgot where he was. Then he saw the small campfire, smoke curling lazily into the air, and Logan sitting beside it, pouring coffee into 2 metal cups. "Morning," Logan said, glancing over his shoulder. "You survived the night," Ethan chuckled quietly, rubbing his eyes. "Barely. I think I heard a raccoon plotting against me." "Probably. They run this place," Logan joked, handing him a cup. The warmth of the coffee felt good in Ethan's hands. They sat side by side, watching the sunlight break through the pines. For a while, neither spoke. The silence wasn't awkward. It was comfortable, full of understanding. Ethan breathed deeply, taking in the scent of pine and smoke. "I can't remember the last time I felt this calm." "That's the woods for you," Logan replied. "They strip everything away until only the truth's left." Those words stayed with Ethan long after they packed up and started their hike back toward the trail. The forest seemed brighter now, more alive. Every sound, every step felt intentional. They talked more as they walked, about life, choices, regrets. Logan shared stories from his time as a ranger, about people he'd met, about nights alone under the stars when he wondered if he'd made the right choices. Ethan found himself relating in ways he didn't expect. "You ever think you took a wrong turn somewhere?" Ethan asked. Logan smiled faintly. "All the time. But sometimes the wrong road takes you exactly where you're supposed to be." The trail grew steeper, and when Ethan stumbled on a slippery patch, Logan caught his arm instinctively. The touch was brief but grounding. Their eyes met for a moment, just long enough for something unspoken to pass between them. Ethan pulled his hand back, his heart beating faster. "Guess I owe you one." Logan shrugged lightly. "Just doing my job." But Ethan saw it, the flicker in his eyes that said there was more to it than that. As the afternoon wore on, clouds gathered overhead. The air shifted, cooler, heavy with rain. Logan checked the sky. "We should find shelter before the storm hits." A few miles later, they reached a small ranger cabin tucked between tall fir trees. It was old but sturdy, stocked with blankets and dry wood. Logan unlocked the door and ushered Ethan inside just as the rain began to fall. The sound was immediate, rain tapping the roof, thunder rolling far away. Logan lit a lantern, filling the space with soft amber light. It was quiet except for the storm outside. Ethan sat near the window, watching drops race down the glass. Logan busied himself with making soup from a few supplies he carried. The smell of it filled the cabin, warm and familiar. "You do this often?" Ethan asked. "Storms?" "Too often," Logan said, grinning. "It's peaceful once you get used to it. Nature decides when you stop moving." Ethan smiled, staring into the rain. "Sometimes I think that's what I've been doing. Just moving without meaning." Logan turned toward him. "You said you're married, right?" Ethan nodded slowly. "Yeah, Daniel, he's a good man, just busy." "Maybe too busy for me?" Logan didn't respond right away. He poured soup into 2 bowls and handed one to Ethan. "Sometimes people love each other but forget how to show it. Life gets in the way." They ate quietly, the fire crackling beside them. Ethan felt the warmth spread through him, not just from the soup, but from being seen. Really seen. "I don't even know why I'm telling you all this," Ethan said after a while. Logan's voice was calm, because sometimes it's easier to talk to someone who doesn't know the whole story. That hit deeper than Ethan expected. As night settled in, the storm grew heavier. The lantern light flickered against the wood walls, casting soft shadows. Logan sat on the opposite side of the small cabin, sketching something in a notebook. "What are you drawing?" Ethan asked. Logan held it up, a quick sketch of the lake where they'd camped. "A memory, I guess." Ethan smiled. "You're good." "I try," Logan said. "You just have to look long enough to find the details." The words weren't about the drawing, and Ethan knew it. Thunder rumbled outside, closer now. Logan set down the notebook. "You should rest. We'll head back in the morning." Ethan nodded but didn't move. The rain softened, the air thick with quiet. He looked at Logan, really looked at him, and for the first time in a long while, he felt something he couldn't name. He whispered, "You make it hard to think straight." Logan met his gaze but didn't move closer. "Maybe you're just starting to think honestly." The storm outside began to fade, leaving only the sound of dripping rain. Ethan turned toward the window again, his heart unsteady. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but something inside him had already changed. He wasn't sure if it was the woods, or Logan, or both, but for the first time in years, he didn't feel lost. The storm passed quietly in the night, leaving the forest washed clean by morning light. When Ethan opened his eyes, the cabin was bathed in soft gold. The fire had burned low, and Logan was standing near the door packing their gear. He turned when he heard Ethan stir and smiled. "Morning," Logan said, voice low, easy. "Looks like we've got clear skies again." Ethan sat up slowly, stretching. "Guess the woods decided we'd had enough rest." "Maybe they just wanted us to listen for a while," Logan replied. They shared breakfast, just coffee and granola bars. Nothing fancy, but it felt warm, grounding. Ethan noticed how peaceful Logan seemed, how present. He admired that about him. The way he could simply exist in the moment without needing to fill it with words or noise. After they cleaned up, they began the long walk back toward the trailhead. The forest seemed different now. The sunlight shimmered off wet leaves, birds called from branches above, and every step felt heavier, not from fatigue, but from something unspoken between them. For hours they walked in companionable silence. Then near a bend in the trail, Logan stopped and looked out toward the valley below. "You know," he said, "most people come out here looking for escape, but they end up finding the parts of themselves they've been avoiding." Ethan glanced at him. "And what do you think I was avoiding?" Logan gave a small smile. "Only you can answer that." They continued walking, but Ethan couldn't shake those words. He thought of Daniel, of the years spent pretending everything was fine, of how he'd accepted distance as normal, silence as safety. But now, after just 2 days in the woods, that silence felt unbearable. By the time they reached the main road, the sun was high. A ranger truck was parked nearby, ready to take Ethan back to town. He set down his backpack, hesitating. "So," he said quietly, "this is where we part ways?" Logan nodded. "For now." Ethan looked down at his hands. "You've been more honest with me than anyone has in a long time." Logan's voice softened. "Maybe you just needed someone to listen." They stood there for a long moment, the sound of wind through trees filling the space between them. Then Ethan said, "I don't know what this was, what it meant, but I won't forget it." Logan smiled faintly. "You don't have to define it. Just let it teach you something." Ethan climbed into the truck. As it pulled away, he looked back. Logan was still standing by the trees, hands in his jacket pockets, watching until the road curved out of sight. Back in Seattle, the noise returned. Cars, phones, people rushing everywhere. But something in Ethan had changed. He walked slower, breathed deeper. The city felt different, like he could finally see through the noise. That evening, Daniel was home early for once. The apartment felt strange, familiar, but distant. Daniel asked about the trip, but his voice carried that distracted tone Ethan knew too well. It was peaceful, Ethan said. Then, before he could stop himself, he added, "It made me realize how quiet we've become. Not the good kind of quiet." Daniel looked up, frowning slightly. "What do you mean?" Ethan hesitated, then spoke the truth he'd been avoiding. "I mean, we barely talk anymore. I don't know if we're partners or just two people sharing space." Daniel didn't respond right away. The silence between them stretched, heavy but necessary. Finally, he said, "I guess I didn't realize how far apart we'd gotten." They talked for a long time, about work, about the distance, about the pieces of themselves they'd lost somewhere along the way. There were no promises, no dramatic confessions, just two men finally speaking honestly. It wasn't easy, but it was real. That night, Ethan sat by the window after Daniel went to bed. The city lights flickered below, like a reflection of the stars he'd seen in the woods. He thought of Logan, the warmth in his voice, the way the forest felt alive around him. He smiled softly. Weeks passed. Ethan started hiking again, this time closer to home. He even picked up his old sketchbook and began drawing trees, skies, moments of light. Daniel noticed the change, the calm that had replaced the constant restlessness. One Saturday morning, Ethan returned to the same Oregon trail. He parked near the entrance and stood at the edge of the woods, listening to the familiar sounds of wind and rustling leaves. Logan wasn't there, but Ethan didn't expect him to be. He took a deep breath and stepped forward, feeling the earth firm beneath his boots. He realized that what happened in those woods wasn't about temptation or escape. It was about remembering himself. The air was cool, clean, alive. As he walked deeper into the trees, sunlight filtered through the branches, painting everything in gold. He smiled to himself, not with longing or regret, but with peace. Sometimes, he thought, people cross our paths not to stay, but to wake us up. Logan had been that, an echo in the quiet, a reminder that life doesn't stop moving unless we let it. When Ethan reached the clearing by the lake, he sat down, pulled out his sketchbook, and began to draw. The sound of water, the rustle of trees, the whisper of wind, all of it felt like a conversation with the past. He closed his eyes, and for a moment, he could almost hear Logan's voice again. Sometimes the woods don't change you. They reveal you. Ethan opened his eyes, smiling at the reflection on the lake. He finally understood. He hadn't gone into the woods to find someone else. He'd gone there to find himself, and this time he knew he wouldn't get lost again.